For so long, ADHD was thought to be a boys' condition because all of the studies were being done on younger boys. Girls were completely overlooked in studies, if they were even, included in the studies. And so when you have different types of ADHD, but the main focus is on hyperactive, which is where most young boys fall, there's this thought that that's the only thing that exists within ADHD. And this is why so many girls and women go undiagnosed or misdiagnosed for years and years.
Welcome to the Butterfly Event Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Hewitt, and we're about to join my co-host, Martha Charneski. Today, we're going to interview an amazing woman and life coach that I worked with for a while. And I'm excited because she specializes in particular, ADHD and neurodivergence. And she's dedicated and passionate and committed to helping individuals transform their lives and find community and a safe place to be themselves while growing, which I love individuals like that. So tune in and let's meet up with them now. I am so thrilled to have you, Tayler, on the Butterfly Event Podcast with Martha and myself. We worked for, I believe it was around 4 months or so at a particular coaching firm. And out of all the coaches, because I believe there was around 30 of them, and correct me if I'm wrong, you really impressed me the most. And the reasons being is, I don't know, I kind of did feel a connection with you. Being neurodivergent, but also I sense that you come from the heart and are authentic. You have great boundaries, really good. And what's also important is that you're not, superficial, trying to impress others. You really come from the heart. And then from what I have observed, you happen to be an excellent coach and great at what you do. So that's from my observation. That's what I wanted to add, and I'm really happy. Thank you for being with Martha and myself.
Yeah, thank you for having me
On the Butterfly Event Podcast. So we always start with a icebreaker question. So this one is one of my favorites. Would you rather fly or be invisible?
Fly, absolutely.
And why?
I remember as a child, I used to have dreams about flying and like being able to see like a bird's eye view of everything, and really getting to see like nature from that angle. And I just remember thinking that would be the coolest thing. I maybe watched too much Peter Pan back in the day, but so absolutely fly if I could.
Awesome. I have to add, for some reason, I thought you were going to say that too. For me, it's always fly. And I had a lot of dreams about flying too when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, I used to have night terrors a lot, nightmares and night terrors. And I learned how at some point to fly away in my dream from things. So flying is really important to me. I get that. And I know
Exactly.
with invisible, I'd get into trouble if I were invisible. No, I don't even.
I would definitely say fly, and I'm on the
or
same page with you
be
both.
invisible?
When I was young, I had dreams of flying, and I, felt like comfortable like that. Like this was where I needed to be, is kind of seeing everything from the better perspective. I don't know. I'm on the same page with you both.
Awesome. All right. So what is
It's
your
such
biggest
a loaded
passion,
question,
Tayler?
isn't it? I would say the easy answer is helping others. I think that's what drives people to coaching to begin with. But I think for me, it goes a little bit deeper into, creating spaces where people feel heard and understood and supported. And I have a soft spot for those who are neurodivergent or have ADHD, stemming from my own personal experiences with ADHD. Um, and I think with that, like the passion lies in not only creating those spaces, but having more conversations about neurodivergence as a whole and ADHD and how nuanced it really is. Um, and for me personally, you know, operating in a world that is built for neurotypical people, I was working against my brain constantly. And with that, I felt like a failure all the time. And I think that when I finally had the opportunity to fully understand my brain in a deeper way, I was able to show myself so much more compassion and grace. And I think that it really allowed me to move through life in such a different way. And so I think by having those conversations and creating spaces where people don't only feel understood and supported, but also where they can be like, wow, okay, this clicks. I know this is my life, but I've never really understood it until now. Um, and helping them find that same grace and compassion, because moving through life with ADHD or as someone who's neurodivergent is not easy. There's a lot of challenges that come along with that, and it can weigh very heavily. So I think that for me, it's helping others understand themselves on a deeper level so that they can really thrive in life and not let the weight of what they're experiencing hold them back from experiencing joy and success in their goals, and just really be able to live a more fulfilled life in that way.
Oh, beautifully said. I completely agree. And I can completely relate to feeling like a failure. Because just think there's like the
Yeah.
blueprint and template, especially in schools, and even
Mm-hmm.
jobs as to how you're to perform and be. And when you're
Yeah.
neurodivergent, you're not going to fit into that mold. And of course, there's no discussion on that. And if there is any discussion on it, like there is more now than when I was in school, or, Martha, and I'm sure yourself, um, it was, we don't talk about this and this has
Right.
nothing to do with it. Is you. You're the problem. It's your behavior,
Mm-hmm.
or you're not smart enough, or you're not good enough somehow. And then we carry that. We carry these limiting negative beliefs. And of course, there's a story around that we're carrying around. And that's what I love about coaching. And I'm so glad that you specialize in this area,
Mm-hmm.
because it's at least 20% of the population. And if you think about that, it's at least 20% of people walking around feeling like either they're a burden on society or they can't do something or whatever. So I love that. And your motive is so pure that you want to
Oh,
help
thank you.
Yeah,
people
I
and then
agree. I
connect with
love
them.
that what you said, because people feel they're kind of an outcast or some sort of outlier because they're not blending into, especially the school system. And I'll say
Mm-hmm.
one good thing when I was in school is we weren't, everyone was treated the same, which was fine. But my mom treated it like it was a superpower. You know what I mean? Like she realized this kid has some sort of gift, and I was a little different than my siblings. So, I mean, I'm not better or worse. I'm just saying, like, she saw it as something precious. And I think
Yeah.
what you're doing as a coach is helping people to realize it can become your superpower. And I think that's,
Yeah.
better than flying and being invisible, since those are
Yes.
not, but it
Right.
can make you feel invisible, because there's also that side of humility that you carry when you're
Yes.
neurodivergent. You just feel, or ADHD, your brain is very reactive, so Heather and I've talked a lot about self-regulation and getting control of that gift,
Mm-hmm.
but I think if we look at it as a gift, it's a kind of a great
Mhm.
thing, and you can be such a positive force in other people's lives. So that's a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Taylor, from what I believe, from what I've seen in working with you, that is your
Yeah, just
objective, is
knowing that
helping
it's
people to
something
see that,
that can
correct?
be celebrated. We are different. There's no, our brains are wired differently.
Right.
But why does different have to be a negative
Yes.
thing? It can be something that can be celebrated. But we're so
Right.
busy focusing on what
That's right.
people would call our weaknesses that we don't always harness our strengths in a way that do help us move through life, um, thriving, whether it's in relationships, with work, uh, as a student. Um, and so being able to have a mindset where you can celebrate it and harness your strengths and still acknowledge the challenges that come along with it, but allowing space for both, I think is really important.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit more in
Yes, I
depth
love
about
that.
what you're
Beautiful.
doing, as far as your purpose right now?
Sure. Yeah. So currently, I am going through an ADHD certification course. It's a year long, so I'm about halfway done with that. Um, I became a certified coach last year, but I've been coaching for roughly 3 years or so. Um, but I think for me, it was my own self discoveries with ADHD, and then having the opportunity to work with those with ADHD at the coaching firm that Heather was speaking about. I had put it on my bio. And so I got a lot of people who were diagnosed with ADHD. And I realized like, this is definitely more of the direction I want to move in because it is a different way of coaching, I would say. There's different, I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a different approach to
The way
it.
you approach it is
And it is
differently.
a little bit different than just regular life coaching. So, with that, I'm working on the
Yeah.
certification. I started my own practice back in August, um, and have been just kind of doing what I can to create spaces for people to come. So, I host a free support group every first Sunday of the month. That is for those who have ADHD or are neurodivergent.
Nice.
And I've also hosted a live series that was kind of a 101 neurodiversity, like the basics, for those who wanted to learn more about it for themselves or for loved ones that they're supporting. So that's kind of where I'm at now, but I'm really excited to continue fostering these spaces in more ways in the future.
Fantastic.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
I love that. I just love it. So, at what point did you decide that you wanted to get into coaching and then really immerse yourself into the ADHD space? Because you mentioned you're in the process,
Mhm.
halfway done with getting your certification. When did you decide that you wanted to
With
really
coaching
get deep into
itself, I'm
this?
not going to lie, it was something that just kind of fell in my lap. I worked for another coaching platform, or I got the job back in 2020. And it was mainly because I have a background in psychology. That's what I majored in college. But then I got into the coaching role and I loved it. And so with that specific job, I was really struggling and I wasn't diagnosed at this point. I had ADHD wasn't even on my radar. So although I did really love the job, there were aspects of it that I was really, really struggling
Mm.
with. And then that particular company actually had massive coaching layoffs. And so I had to move on from there for a while. But
Mm.
I knew that coaching was something I wanted to continue to do. And then I think that when I got my own diagnosis, um, as I said, I kind of went down like a rabbit hole of research. I was like, I need to know everything about this now because everything that I've been told is not wrong, but it's it's not everything. There's very little that's actually being discussed about ADHD itself, and especially how it presents in women. And so I just spent like a year, like just really doing deep
Mm.
dives into a lot of research I could find, And I think once I decided to go and actually get my coaching certification, at that point, I was like, this is the end goal. Like, I want to be an ADHD coach. And I think even just getting to the firm that you and I worked at together, that really just solidified when I saw, like, not necessarily the need, but, the population of people we were working with and how many of those people were showing up to the neurodivergent meetings and needing that support and looking for, ADHD specific
Yes.
coaching. I think, it's definitely something that's very needed.
Yes.
So it just really kind of solidified my decision. And so from there,
Yes.
it's just kind of been like taking those steps to get there. So,
Yes. Brilliant. I think that's such a great idea because being in that environment where we work together,
yeah.
I mean, some of those meetings had upwards of 300 people that would come. And when the topic veered on neurodivergence and ADHD, I tried to bring it up as much as possible when I hosted meetings because it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things that people are walking around
Yeah.
undiagnosed and they're really struggling. I mean, really. So I have 3 people in my immediate family that have it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very challenging. We need to have more information and insights out there around about that. And I know for me, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, I had gotten a formal diagnosis. I went and saw a psychologist and had an evaluation done. She specializes in ADHD and
Yeah.
autism. And I learned a lot about myself because there was an actual whole evaluation that was done on myself, and all of us went in and had evaluations done. And 4 out of 5 of us had that. And so now we deal with each other
Yeah.
differently. We relate to each other differently. No, it just the conversation and
Mm-hmm.
communication and interaction is so different now. So imagine if someone is struggling with an addiction or
Mm-hmm.
addictive behaviors and they have this, and all they've been trying to do is self medicate the whole time because they don't have
Right.
those emotional skills, emotional regulation skills to be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be really tough as a coach to try to navigate
Yeah.
working with people like that.
And I was also thinking when you
So that's
mentioned,
awesome.
I
I'm so
feel
glad you're
like
doing that.
people with ADHD or neurodivergent, they kind of veer towards psychology. You already, there was something inside of you like drawing you to the solution to helping others, but you were also trying to help yourself and
Yeah.
maybe subconsciously. And then once you knew, okay,
Yeah.
I have this issue of ADHD and you wanted to know everything, that's priceless because now you bring a level of compassion and, empathy that you naturally have. So I feel like,
Yeah.
you are on the right trajectory all along, and
Yeah.
it's like the things that happen just make you end up right here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they have
Let's
that joke about if you study psychology, it's because you're really trying to figure out what you've got going on. And I'm like, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so the next thought
Yes.
is, what's the biggest
Absolutely.
misconception people have about the work that you're doing?
Let's see. With coaching itself, I think that the biggest misconception is that a lot of people come to coaching and expect you to give them solutions. And the beautiful part about coaching is that the solutions
Mm,
are meant to come from the clients themselves because they have it. Our job as a coach is just to draw
mhm.
that out of them. Um, so I think that a lot of people come to
Yes.
coaching and they expect to kind of just be handed answers, handed solutions. When at the end of the day, though, like no solution is a one size fits all. And, that's something that's kind of hard to describe to people. Or they, confuse it with therapy, which is a lot different as well. But I think with ADHD specifically, a lot of misconceptions lie even just in what the symptoms can be. For so long, ADHD was thought to be a boys' condition because
Mm,
all of the studies were being done on younger boys. um, girls were completely overlooked in studies, if they were even included in the studies. And so when you have different types of ADHD, but the main focus is on hyperactive, which is where most young boys fall, there's this thought that that's the only thing that exists within ADHD. And this is why so many girls and women go undiagnosed or
Right.
misdiagnosed for years and years. And so I think this is kind of where like these conversations, like we're having more conversations now. We're seeing such an uptick in ADHD diagnoses, and it's not because more people have ADHD. It's mainly because we're having the conversations. The diagnostic criteria has finally changed and has been more accepting towards how ADHD often presents in women or young girls. Um, I'm on a tangent now, aren't I? But those are kind of, I feel like, the most common misconceptions between just coaching and ADHD in general is kind of putting both into these boxes that don't really,
Yeah.
it's not their shape.
Exactly. And I'm really glad that you mentioned this because I've had this conversation with many people, kind of getting to know it. And as I went in, like I mentioned with the evaluation and knowing it, and don't get me wrong,
Right.
it's not one size fits all and it doesn't look the same in everybody. But you kind of have an idea
Mm-hmm.
of what it looks like, especially when you're working with clients.
Right.
So I never tell people they have it. I don't diagnose or anything like that. And I wait, would you be open to thinking about getting an evaluation with this? Because you work so hard and you're doing everything right, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe having this knowledge around this would help you. Sometimes I have approached it that way with people, but you're right. I mean, just like with cancer, I've known many people in my family and just over the years who had
Mm-hmm.
cancer, and their symptoms were different. They looked different. They responded to treatment different. Their treatments were
Yeah.
different. It was different. And there is a spectrum. There's a spectrum of um, zero,
Mm-hmm.
stage zero in some cancers to five, and so someone could have ADHD a little bit more than somebody else. And sometimes we tend to, well, I know this one person
Right.
that has, and I'm not anything like them. And that you're really doing yourself a
Mm-hmm.
disservice because some of us have really learned to mask because we grew up in extreme conditions and environments with
Mm-hmm.
teachers or parents or authority figures that if you acted a particular way, you were severely punished for it. So you learned how to mask and then you take that into adulthood. So I'm glad that we're having this
I was just
conversation
going to
about
say, when
this.
I was a
Martha, did
kid,
you want to add
basically how
anything?
they would just say girls were bad at math. You know what I mean? It was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, is that ADHD presenting? Because it is part of it. It can be part of it. And the other thing was that girls are really good at communication.
Yes,
So I read a study that boys learn on one side of their brain, women
right.
or girls learn on both sides of their brain. So that's one of the reasons I've read that women or
Yes.
girls aren't as often on the autism spectrum because we're using both sides of our brain to communicate. So there's so much, information now scientifically studied, but also, like you said, masking. You have to pretend that you just fit in until you
Mm-hmm.
find the people that you belong with. And then you're like, these are my people. And
Yeah.
that
Mm,
happens throughout your life. It happens from the playground to
mm,
college and adult life. You find those people that your brain just migrates towards, and your humor and whatever it is, all those beautiful qualities, you find your people. You don't have to pretend anymore. It's okay to be yourself. That's being vulnerable, but people still, I went somewhere last night and I had to wear,
no.
well, I played pickleball. I'm just going to be honest, and I had never played pickleball before. So I was like, what do you wear? And I thought, oh, my friend Anne's going to be there. She won't judge me, So, and then I wore the right thing, but I didn't know. And I thought, this is so funny that I'm even worried, but it shows we have that self-consciousness. We
Mm-hmm.
can
Yeah.
let it go as we get older and realize people are going to love us for who we are. So I think these things are kind of gifts, but they're also something we struggle with, the weakness part, and so I love that you're coaching for this specifically, because that's
Yeah.
where people need to realize you can strengthen those little areas that you're kind of struggling with. And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mhm.
why I think a coach specifically geared towards that is great. So good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, Taylor, since we're bringing up neurodivergence and we have an audience, can you explain what exactly that is? Because I know I'll get messages about what is
Absolutely. So the term
neurodivergence. Could
neurodivergent
you
is
explain
just
that?
kind of an umbrella term to describe those who have variation in their mental functions. So a lot of people do tend to think it's just, like ADHD or ASD, autism spectrum disorder, falls under this umbrella as well, OCD. But it actually, it's dozens of different conditions. Epilepsy falls under this umbrella. Cerebral palsy falls under this umbrella. If you've had a traumatic brain injury, that's, you you went about things differently after the surgery, right? Where like maybe there was a little bit of a shift in either your personality or the way that you go about things. That's a form of neurodivergence. So it's more about just the term itself is meant to give a name to what is typically thought as something bad or wrong about someone because they do something differently than the majority of the world. Um, but the movement of neurodiversity is meant to celebrate these differences and still honor that they're different, but that it doesn't make us less or incapable of doing things. It's just a matter of celebrating those differences.
Yeah, well said. I like to explain it to people this
Mm-hmm.
way. It's just a different operating system. Apple
Mm-hmm.
versus Android or Mac versus
Right.
Windows. Neither are wrong or right. It's just when you're neurodivergent, the neurotypical world is
Mm-hmm.
Android and you're operating on an Apple system. I mean, basically, that's what it is. So it's tough. It's tough. It's not impossible. I really try to make
Yeah.
sure to frame it in such a positive way because, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, the neurodivergent umbrella is huge. I mean, bipolar, there's so many that are, 20, 30
Mm-hmm.
different ones, and even highly sensitive people. Elaine Aron coined that phrase, highly sensitive. I learned about it at least 15, 20 years ago. She's got her books on it. It's fascinating reads, and you can go to her website and take the quiz if you're highly sensitive. So if you are highly sensitive, which is at least 20% of the world's population, you're neurodivergent. I mean, you fall under that umbrella, and it is a gift. It's a gift. I used to hate it, but that empathic gift that we have, just like with anything, we can work with our strengths, as Martha mentioned, and really sharpen our weaknesses. That's all. And
Yeah.
just kind of learn
Absolutely.
It
boundaries.
made
It's
me
all
think of
about
Jim
boundaries, right?
Quick. Remember Jim Quick and how he,
So,
he was the boy with the broken brain. And then look what he
yes,
did with that, because he was like, why is my brain broken? And he learned ways to learn because someone took an interest in him. His story is kind of fascinating. So each one of us, we've had to find ways to learn. And when it's our passion, then we can dive deep, you know? And I think that's what we've all found is passion, things that we're passionate about. So I think that really makes a big difference.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what motivates you to keep going in your work?
You want the ADHD answer
Yeah.
or with ADHD, I have to give myself that pressure. No, in my real life work, though, I think it really is just the fact that, you know, this is what one of the first things that I've really felt this strongly and passionately for. And so just knowing that it's needed, these spaces are needed, these conversations are needed, the support is needed. I think that's what really motivates me to like just keep moving forward and doing what I'm doing, because it's just, people shouldn't have to go through life feeling like a failure. They shouldn't have to go through life feeling like something's wrong with them. They shouldn't have to go through life not having a community of people to lean on and support them. So I think just knowing that like that's
Yes.
that's what's being created. So
Yes. And I'm glad you've done that. That is awesome. It really is. You mentioned two things that are so fundamental to success, and that is having that space that's safe to go to so you can work on, learning these skills, learning yourself.
yeah.
Because it's almost like putting on glasses and seeing the world differently for the first time. Not in a way of criticism, but wow, I could see color now. I could see how I fit in and belong. And then having that place of community for support, because we need that. Because one of the things I had learned throughout that evaluation process is we need support, a certain level of support. Some of us need maybe level 1 support, some of us 2, some of us 3. It's good to find out, what level of support you need, and then leverage that. It doesn't mean you're defective. It means that, man, I'm going to fly now. Before I had something tethered and I couldn't fly free the way I wanted to, but now I'm leveraging this and I'm flying. And now I'm seeing places and going places I never thought I could, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So it's just very empowering. It's not disempowering. And that's the one point that I wanted to make sure that everyone knows from our time here together is we're talking about empowerment of knowing these things and owning them and embracing it. It's not disempowering. Because I was walking around, as you mentioned, and Martha mentioned, you walk around feeling like a failure, you feel disempowered, not empowered. With this.
Yeah, and just to add to that,
yeah,
there's
beautifully
days,
said.
because
Love
we're
this.
all similar, that we kind of crash and burn. You know what I mean? Like we're just like, I have got to pick myself up and keep going. And you learn how to like not,
Yes.
sometimes you just reach so much deeper inside of yourself. These are your days where you're the tea bag in the hot water and you see how strong you're really getting. And we've all had those days where we're just like, you know what? I need to give grace, like you mentioned earlier, have those moments where you're just like, I'm not feeling it today. Let me regroup and let me work on me for, today or for a few hours or whatever you need. Then you get up, you're even stronger. So part of what we're all going through, we have those days where we're just like, I can't push through. And then you just learn how to do it. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
That's true. And in the community space makes it safe to do so in the process. That's why I love that community part, Tayler. That's awesome. So what is something unique that you bring to this field?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily unique, but I do think that having ADHD myself allows me to connect with other ADHDers, in a deeper way, especially those who are my coaching clients or those who I've done group coaching with or what have you. Because you could be the most understanding person in the world and not understand an ADHD brain unless you have one. It's very nuanced, and there's a lot of things that, kind of fall under ADHD that people don't realize, whether it's, when we're talking about emotional regulation, now that's becoming one of the more common symptoms that before wasn't even looked at. And emotional regulation affects so many areas of your life.
That's right.
So, with that, I think that
Yes.
just kind of, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. My ADHD is kicking in. The original question was,
Unique.
yeah, there we
What
go.
is
Yeah.
something
She's
unique
showing up
that you
today.
bring to this field?
So I think with that, understanding the struggles and the challenges that my clients are going through, not necessarily always sharing mine, but just knowing that, like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's not, sometimes getting up and starting your day, getting out of bed in general
Right?
is difficult. Making it to appointments or remembering appointments is difficult.
Yeah.
Communicating can be difficult. And in ways that other people don't fully understand unless they're
Yeah.
also going through it. So,
And when you agree, when clients know that you can relate on that level,
yeah,
they're
yeah, I would
more
say
apt
so.
to open up. Because we've all gone to doctors where, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
you have ADHD and they don't. And then they start to try to give you advice or they're
Yeah.
asking you questions, and it's like way out there, too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something inside of you that shuts down. I know it does
Absolutely.
for me because I'm like, you don't get what I'm saying. So why am I going to even, so you having that's a huge advantage that you have in working with people. And whether they're ADHD or somehow neurodivergent in another way, is still a
Yeah.
similar vein and you can still
And
help them.
the thing I
Absolutely.
was thinking is
So
for people
that's pretty
nowadays,
cool.
if you feel heard, which is what you're saying, you let people feel heard. That's the closest thing to feeling loved that you can give to people. And people are kind of starved of that. They're starved
Yeah.
of, that's where they can't regroup because they don't feel heard or they feel invalidated and they can't move forward from that. So, I think with ADHD or neurodivergent, you can get too much on your plate. You
Yeah.
don't do self care right. That's one of
Mm-hmm.
the other things you have to learn to be an adult, and no one's coming to help you. So, all
Yeah.
those things, but just helping someone feel heard, I feel like that's such a great thing that you both are doing as coaches. And I've helped people in that respect. People call me from different states because they're recommended. And sometimes they're just like, you heard me, you know how I feel. And I think that makes a huge difference for so many people.
Yes.
So keep
Absolutely.
up that excellent part of your work. And
Yeah.
so the next question is, what advice would you give
Yeah.
others that are struggling with an area of mental, emotional, or physical health?
I think it would just be know that you're not alone. That there are many of us who often struggle in silence or in secret, but that you don't have to. And so the next one would just also be asking for help, knowing that there is help, whether it's seeking therapy, whether it's seeking support spaces, whether it's seeking a coach, seeking connections with other people who understand you. That, in the world that we live in today, is chaotic as it can be with social media and everything just being available at our fingertips, there are some pros to that, and that there are so many resources out there, whether it is just doing a deep dive into something that you're experiencing or being able to connect with others who are experiencing the same thing. So I think it's just know that you're not alone and know that you can also ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. We're not meant to go through life doing everything on our own. We're just not designed for that.
That is so well said because, and I've seen this posted this way on social media that it seems like there's this
Yeah.
award that people feel they're going to get for brutally
Mm-hmm.
overexhausting themselves, overworking. Like you're going to get the trophy for being that way at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're
Right.
finding is, and doing it on your own too, by the way, that I used to be there. I used to believe
Mm-hmm.
that. I used to do that. And then I ended up in chronic burnout. and then you deplete your body so badly, then you end up with autoimmune like I did. And now I can spot this in other people, and they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and oh, I'm in so much pain. And I'm thinking to myself, I was the same way. And now I think, oh man, they need to rest. That's what they need. They need some self-care, some TLC, not keep working more. I'm not going to admire this person for pushing past their limits or boundaries because we all have them. I honor people more and actually think higher of them when they actually have those healthy boundaries. Now I see it so differently.
Yeah, I
So I'm really
remember
glad
hearing
that
a
you
podcaster
brought
say
that
something
up.
about when you have kind of a brain like, like you were saying, 20% of the people, you're kind of putting too little icing on all the cupcakes. You're reaching too many areas when you should be more specialized. So when you start learning, what are my gifts that are going to help others? What are the ways I need to work on me? You kind of categorize things, and then you can pick times to focus. That's the hard part, is we're just always trying to spread thin layers on everything in one day, but we have to learn how to kind of compartmentalize our life. And I think that's one of the harder things with ADHD. It's truly a battle. But once you start, I just have to take some time in the morning to decide what is my big goal today, what are the little goals today, and then spend the right amount of time on things. And that way you're reaching out to help others. You're not so general that you're not even helping yourself. So I think, it's all good what we're learning, how to do these things. And it's a level up, it's a journey. We're leveling up. Sometimes we go back 2 steps, but we're going forward, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So Tayler, where can people find you to sign up to work?
Yeah, so I have both
or find
Facebook
you on
and
social
Instagram.
media?
It's called The Remarkable Mind Collective. And I have my website as well. I just got that up a couple weeks ago, so that was exciting. So it's
So where can
remarkablemindcollective.com.
we find you?
And then for
I
the
love it.
Instagram, it's Remarkable Mind and then _ collective. And I do post a lot of stuff there too. The goal is to also post informational posts, videos, just kind of like normalizing a lot of the quirks of ADHD and the things that we experience, to hopefully reach more people and help them feel seen and some of the silly, more mundane things that come along with ADHD.
Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. I'm so proud of you, Tayler.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad we
anytime
got
that I
to
get
do
to
this
info
together.
dump a little bit, it makes me excited. So it's one of my neurodivergent love languages.
Yes. I'm going to find you and I'm going to start definitely keeping up with your posts. Okay.
Oh, thank you. That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
This was wonderful. So that wraps up today's episode. We got to meet an amazing woman and life coach, Tayler Cline. She shared her knowledge, her wisdom, and insights as to how to live a healthier, more fulfilling life. It's so important to uplift each other as women. We have to do this more. We get so much out of it, it's a wonderful, beautiful experience. It not only do we feel like when we give, we, boost serotonin, but it builds confidence, it creates empowerment, fosters personal growth, creativity, and a sense of community. We learn from one another. Always remember the journey of emotional mastery is just that, a journey. And by understanding the science of our brains and implementing these tools, we can navigate our emotions with grace and resilience. If you find you need more support or one-on-one coaching, please visit my website and fill out the contact info at heathermhewitt.com. And if you found this episode enlightening, please share it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights on your mental and emotional well-being. Remember to embrace the change and discover the beauty of transformation and embrace your inner butterfly.